picture this, right? You're on base, just another face in the crowd, and then you see it. A plain envelope kind of tucked away on a bulletin board. You get closer, and your heart's probably pounding a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And it turns out it's an invitation to try out for Delta Force. Gives you chills, huh? That's the kind of mystique we're talking about today.
You wanted to do a deep dive on Delta Force, get past all the Hollywood stuff, and this Wikipedia article you sent, this is the perfect place to start. So let's ditch the movie cliches and really uncover what this unit actually does.
Yeah, it's definitely more than just hype, that's for sure.
Delta Force, officially, it's called the 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta. You'll see that written as 1st SFOD Day SFD. It's basically the Army's answer to these really sensitive, really high-stakes situations, the kind of stuff most people never even know about.
We're talking tier 1 here, right? Like on the same level as the Navy SEALs.
Right.
But what does that even mean? Outside of, video games and movies.
Imagine, like, the best athletes in the entire world.
Okay.
And then you narrow that down to just this tiny group, and they have these unique skills that nobody else has. That's kind of what Tier 1 is in the Special Ops world. Delta Force, along with units like, SEAL Team 6, they handle the missions where failure is not an option. A lot of times it's counter-terrorism, hostage rescue, direct action, very surgical, very strategic stuff.
So not your average soldier then, more like the best of the best of the best, and with a very, very specific purpose.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. So when people think special forces, they usually picture like the Green Berets and they're incredible soldiers.
Right.
But Delta Force, they exist in their own world,
Their laser focus is counterterrorism. They train and they're equipped to neutralize threats with pinpoint accuracy. And a lot of the time, they do it before it even makes the news.
Makes sense when you look at how Delta Force got started. The Wikipedia article mentions that it came about because of a crisis, the Iran hostage situation back in 1979.
Yeah, that crisis was a huge wake-up call. The government realized we need a dedicated counterterrorism force like yesterday, ready to deploy in a heartbeat.
Right.
And that's where Charlie Beckwith comes in. He was a Green Beret who'd actually been pushing for a U.S. version of the British SAS. Like, for years, he'd been saying we needed this.
And he really had to convince the government to actually make this unit a reality, didn't he?
He did. The article mentions this Robert Redford paper, which honestly sounds more like a Hollywood movie title than, a serious military document.
It's a funny name, yeah, but it's totally true. It took Beckwith and his team 2 full years to get Delta Force up and running, from that initial proposal to being operational. And that's because building a unit from scratch, especially one with such unbelievably high standards, well, it takes time.
2 years is a long time, though. You'd think with all that pressure to be ready to go, they'd want things done yesterday. Why such a long timeline?
They're not just trying to fill slots, They're handpicking the absolute best of the best. A lot of them come from already elite units, Rangers, Green Berets. And the selection process is, well, let's just say it's notorious for being brutal. They weed out almost everyone. You have to be incredibly capable and even more resilient. It takes time to forge that kind of excellence.
Now, speaking of selection, the article is pretty vague about this whole process, but it did say the Army puts out notices for Delta Force tryouts.
Yeah.
But, this is interesting, you kind of have to already be in the know because these notices, they're only on military bases.
It's all very hush-hush. But even if you do happen to see that notice, you need, top scores in everything, a completely clean record, and a whole lot of grit.
Yeah.
We're talking like the top 1% of the top 1%.
Okay, so let's say you see the notice, you've got the credentials, then what? They just throw you into the fire, so to speak.
It's intense. The selection process, it tests your mental toughness just as much as your physical prowess. We're talking grueling marches, like 40-mile sleep deprivation, constant pressure. They're messing with your mind on purpose just to see who's going to crack.
And keep in mind, these are already highly trained soldiers.
Oh, yeah.
To be like the best in your unit and then go up against the best of the best.
Yeah.
Talk about intimidating.
Totally. It's not just about enduring the physical challenges, though. It's about staying calm, cool, and collected under extreme pressure. Being able to make good decisions when you're totally stressed. Only a very, very small number of people make it through.
That's right.
But let's say you do make it through. You're part of Delta Force. What's next?
Yeah.
This article says 6 months of specialized training. 6 months. But what could they possibly teach you? in 6 months that would take, already elite soldiers to this whole other level.
Well, that's where it gets really interesting. The training is unbelievably diverse. It covers all kinds of things. I mean, they're learning advanced marksmanship, demolitions, you expect that, right? But then there's picking locks, espionage, tradecraft, even, get this, VIP protection, like a secret service.
Wow. So it's not just about being like this one-man army. It's more like you're a multi-tool, ready for anything. What's the logic behind that? Why such a wide range of skills?
Delta Force operators, they're force multipliers, that's what they call them. They might have to train foreign allies or gather intel behind enemy lines or pull off a high-risk hostage rescue. Adaptable, resourceful, ready for any situation, that's the name of the game.
And all this is happening under this veil of secrecy, right? Like, the article barely even mentioned any actual missions.
Yeah, and rightfully so. The details of what they do, that stuff rarely ever gets out, and when it does, it's usually years later, long after the fact. The article does mention Operation Urgent Fury, though, Grenada, back in '83.
Okay.
It was a pretty new unit at that point, and how they performed during that operation, they were rescuing American medical students, by the way. That really solidified their reputation, showed everyone what they could do.
It really does sound like something out of a movie. A daring rescue mission on a tropical island. But it also highlights something important, don't you think? Delta Force. They're not just about brute force. They're often operating in these really complex, really delicate situations where being precise and discreet is absolutely essential.
Exactly. And you see that in Operation Just Cause, too. Panama. 1989, they captured Manuel Noriega.
Right.
Complex raid on a prison showed their ability to execute a high-risk mission with incredible precision, even with all this political turmoil going on.
And then there's Operation Gothic Serpent, right? Somalia. That one got made into a movie, Black Hawk Down, although I'm sure the movie took some liberties.
Definitely.
But still, that operation, as tragic as it was, I mean, it really showed the world just how dangerous these missions can be, even for the most elite soldiers.
Yeah, it's a harsh reminder that even with the best training in the world, with all the preparation, sometimes things go wrong. You just can't predict everything. The fog of war, And these guys and women, they're putting their lives on the line every single time they go out there.
Speaking of unpredictable, the article mentioned that Delta Force often works with other agencies, like they mentioned the CIA's Special Activities Center, the SAC. What's that dynamic like?
It's fascinating. You've got Delta Force, right? The tactical experts, and they're working side by side with the CIA, who bring their own unique skills to the table. Intelligence gathering, covert ops.
So you've got these two groups, incredibly secretive, incredibly elite, and each with their own way of doing things, their own culture, having to work together seamlessly. That must take an insane amount of trust and coordination.
Absolutely. But when it works, man, it's something else. They complement each other perfectly. They're able to take on these challenges that neither one of them could handle alone.
Yeah. Reading about Delta Force working with the CIA, it's like you can't help but think of those spy novels, right?
Yeah.
Where all these different agencies have to team up, except this is real life.
Oh, yeah.
With incredibly high stakes. Makes you wonder, what does the future hold for a unit like Delta Force?
That's the million-dollar question right there. I mean, the world is changing so fast.
Right.
And the threats that a unit like Delta Force faces, those are evolving too.
So less about, like, actually storming a compound.
Yeah.
And more about, I don't know, anticipating the threats before they even happen.
Exactly. Think about it. Cyber warfare, disinformation campaigns, the rise of, all these decentralized extremist groups.
Yeah.
Delta Force can't just react anymore. They have to be proactive, anticipate those threats, and figure out a way to neutralize them before they can even really take root.
Which actually brings up a point that the article touched on, but I feel like we should dig a little deeper. The whole hearts and minds aspect of what they do.
Right. People don't always think about that part of it. Yeah. But it's so important. It's not just about kicking down doors all over the globe.
Right.
A big part of what they do is training foreign allies, building relationships, sharing their expertise. I mean, they work with guys like the Australian SAS, the British SAS.
So building trust, understanding all these different cultures. Because sometimes the best way to combat a threat is to, prevent it from even existing in the first place.
Right. It's like that saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And we can't forget the human element here either. We're talking about incredible, courageous men and women putting their lives on the line. And in situations most of us couldn't even imagine. And they do it all without any fanfare, any recognition. They operate in the shadows to keep the rest of us safe.
It really makes you stop and think. Reading this article, it really struck me. The dedication, the skill, the sheer willpower that it takes to even be considered for a unit like Delta Force. It says something about human potential, don't you think? Like how far some people are willing to push themselves to serve their country. It does. It reminds you that the world is a complex place. It can be a dangerous place. And there are people out there, real people, who are working tirelessly, often behind the scenes, to make it a little bit safer for the rest of us.
Well said. To our listener, we've only scratched the surface today. Delta Force is a deep, complex topic. There's a lot more to it than meets the eye. But hopefully, through this deep dive, you've gotten a better understanding, a new appreciation for this elite unit, their history, the selection process, the missions, and probably most importantly, the people. It's a world shrouded in secrecy, absolutely, but one that deserves our attention and our respect.
Couldn't agree more. And remember, there's always more to learn. Keep asking those questions, keep seeking knowledge, and we'll be here to guide you through the next deep dive.